And okay, thank you, and welcome to, I guess, the first webinar from the Fraternity Society this year in 2020 first. And today we are very privileged to have Mr. Jose Luis Marcus to share with us his topic, which is China-EU Comprehensive Agreement on Investment, which is the very popular CAI. And our speaker is a very distinguished member of the Macanese community, and he's an economist by training, born and raised in Macau, and he's quite famous among the locals also as a former public administrator. He used to serve in a number of public entities, including the Government Tourism Office, but most importantly probably would be he was the president of the Macau Municipal Council from 1993 to 2001, and since 2002 he has been the president of the board of directors of the Institute of European Studies of Macau, and is very involved in research in EU studies and EU-China relations, and also deeply involved in development of our local cultural industry. And Mr. Marcus, and the stage is yours, and please share with us your insights in this recently reached deal between the EU and China. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, it's a pleasure to be with you. I don't know altogether how many of us are here, but I would like to thank, first of all, to Professor Wu Mei and the Fraternity Society for inviting me to address this very new topic, actually, not only in regard to China-EU relations, but also very generally speaking, this is a new and very important development in terms of international politics as well. And I would like to thank also Phil for arranging the technical part. So good evening from Macau. I don't know where our participants are, but we are here in Macau. And so I hope I will be able to bring to you some of my talks on this very new issue, a very new topic. I have to say that initially, when we agreed to do this, the official draft was not even published, and this was about, let's say, 20 days ago, something like that. And only a few days ago, the EU published the official draft of this agreement, which is a China-EU Comprehensive Agreement on Investment. And of course, being here in Macau, we will also address this eventually, if eventually it has an impact on Macau and the Greater Bay Area in its relationship with the European Union as well. So I'm going to start by excuse me, I have something here I need to do. Okay. So the first question that everyone will ask is, why is this agreement needed? What is its role in the EU and China economic and even somehow trade relationship? Why does we have this image that I'm sharing with you, and I'm sure that all of you had seen on the 30th of December last year with President Xi Jinping, with the President of the European Council, with Chancellor Merkel, President Macron, and the President of the EU Commission. And of course, we can understand what is the role of each of them, particularly Chancellor Merkel, which is the rotating presidency, was the rotating presidency of the EU at the time, and now is Portugal the rotating presidency, and all the other the very important people that are present in that picture. But what was the role of Emmanuel Macron? Why is he there? Well, we are going to talk about this a bit later, but what I like to stress is that this comprehensive agreement on investment has been negotiated since 2013. So it's been quite a long time. And the reason why it is needed is because, on the first hand, the institutional factor that the Treaty of Lisbon that entered into force in 2009 put its competence of negotiating investment agreements on the part of the EU or as part of the EU common commercial policy and as an exclusive competence of the EU Commission. So this investment agreement for the whole of the EU the membership is replacing the 26 BIT or bilateral investment treaties that EU member states are still having with China. And of course, the only EU member state that is left out because it doesn't have an investment agreement or treaty with China is Ireland. But what the main purpose was for all, of course, the membership of the EU was to seek better investment conditions in the Chinese market. Of course, for China is also important since, on the one hand, recent developments in the EU, namely the introduction of a screening mechanism for investment and other measures, have somehow introduced a factor of uncertainty for Chinese investors, and therefore. And of course, we are talking about the period of time before 2020, before the events related to COVID-19. So even in 2019, the Chinese investment in EU was already decreasing since 2006 when it reached a peak. And it has to do, among other things, of course, there were some measures that were enacted by the Chinese government to, let's say, avoid those investments that were made in football clubs or something like that, some speculative nature as well. But for the investors in the real economy of the EU, there was some uncertainty that all this talk about the screening mechanism and the merger and acquisition control and so on, this has actually introduced this issue of some uncertainty, and so Chinese investment in EU was coming down actually from 2016 until now. And on the other hand, also the EU investors in China and EU investment in China actually has not really developed very positively because there was also many factors in terms of uncertainty regarding market assets, regarding a series of other issues that most of them actually are addressed in the new comprehensive agreement on investment. So both sides, as in all these cases regarding investment, business operators, they look for more certainty and predictability, and therefore this agreement comes at a very, very crucial time. And of course, there is a direct factor that was introduced in the 2018, 2019, in regard to the urgency of this agreement, particularly to the EU, which was the US-China Phase 1 agreement, which actually introduced trade diversion effect on EU exports to China, affecting mostly Germany because of its very important exports to China, namely in the area of cars and so on, and triggering new motivations for EU investors to target the Chinese consumer. So this impact also play some important role in bringing up the urgency of this agreement. But the most important reason why this agreement, of course, and all commentators would probably agree on that, this agreement came to the point of a political agreement, so a political settlement, I would say, is because, of course, the change of administration in the United States, and somehow, on the one hand, the European Union wanted to keep its strategic autonomy in deciding upon this very crucial matter, and on the other hand, China, of course, also was seeking a political and significant act or action or result in terms of stressing the importance of the Chinese agenda, and not only Chinese, but of course also the European agenda of multilateralism, multipolarity, and so on. So the timeline for this comprehensive agreement that we have here, we can see that it started in 2012 in the 15th China-EU summit, when the negotiations were agreed, and the impact assessment was published in 2013 by the EU Commission, and in 2014 at the 16th China-EU summit, this agreement or these negotiations were announced, and but only in 2016 that the text-based negotiations actually started. In 2018, the first offer on market access was exchanged during the 20th China-EU summit. In 2019, there was this decision that the agreement would be finished by 2020. And of course, 2020 also, the second semester of 2020 was also the semester where Angela Merkel would be doing her last presidency of the EU, since she will be leaving the stage by September 2021. So this has very, very important significance due to the very influential role that Angela Merkel played, and not only her, but the German, somehow the German staff or the German important German officials at the EU level, they play in the final stages of the negotiation, so that this agreement could be ended by December 2020. So it was really a very strong push and a very strong with a very strong will to finish this agreement on both sides, that it was announced as a political agreement on the 30th of December 2020. And initially, we only had some, let's say, some information on the agreement, but the official draft was only published January 22nd, so a few days ago. So we are working, we will be commenting already based on the official draft. although of course the time that we have will not allow us to go very, very further in terms of these comments. And we need to say this very clearly. This is only a political agreement. What we have here is a draft, will need to be worked out very much. As you can see, the timeline or the process of up to the approval and ratification of this agreement by the European Parliament. So it will take some time. It will take some time. And so what we have here is a draft that has been agreed by all the member states of the EU. It's very important, all the member states of the EU. However, there is still, and you can see by the document that the EU has put into its website, the document of the draft, you will see that there are still some articles, even some sections that are let's say, are work in progress. And let's see what the Portuguese presidency of the EU will do about that. We hope it will work very hard in terms of advancing some of the aspects of the agreement which are still a little bit vague or not even at least published for the public. And so we will still need to go through this process of approval by the Council again, then the signature of the agreement. And the reason why Emmanuel Macron, at least this is some commentators saying that he is in that picture is because, not only because France and Germany are the two most important recipients of foreign direct investment from China, the two main actors, political actors of the EU, now that the UK has left, right? The two main actors, the Axis, the so-called Franco-German relationship is a kind of a pillar of what the EU is today. And so many commentators, they argue that Emmanuel Macron was there because he wished to be the one signing the agreement when France becomes the rotating presidency of the EU in the first semester of 2022. So after the signature of the agreement, we still need to have the consent of the European Parliament, and then only after that it will be formally ratified and adopted. So we are still somehow at the early stage, but of course this is something that I will leave for maybe further discussion. But nevertheless, I would like to call your attention for the fact that from what we have heard until now, there will be some hurdles in the process, particularly when it is for discussion at the European Parliament. So what are the main focus of the agreement? Based on the official draft release on January 22nd, 2021, so a few days ago, the agreement is composed of different sections, and one is the objective and general definitions. The other one is the liberalization on investment, which is a very important substantive part of this agreement. All of it is important. Actually, it's very detailed. People who had seen it, particularly lawyers, people from the legal profession, they comment that this agreement is very detailed. So the liberalization of investments, including articles on market access, performance requirements, cover entities, and I'm going to address this topic of cover entities a bit later. The impartiality and independence of regulatory authority, national treatment, most favored nation treatment, senior management and board of directors, etc. And then there's another section dedicated to sustainable development. It's also very substantive, very important. One of the strong points if I would argue in terms of the European public opinion, this point on the sustainable development, which include articles on corporate social responsibility, the right to regulate on levels of protection, cooperation in investment-related environmental issues, investment on climate change, and investment and labor. So this is a very, very important section of the agreement as well. And then the institutional and final provisions, including setting up of the investment committee at the level of vice premier for China, negotiations on investment protection, investment dispute settlement. And there is this agreement actually is very interesting because it's supposed to be replacing the bilateral investment treaties between China and the 26 member states of the EU. However, the dispute settlement part of the agreement and the investment protection part of this agreement is not included in CAI. It's going to be completed within 2 years of the signature of the present agreement. And there are maybe substantive reasons, but also practical and, let's say, procedural reasons, because it seems, according to experience of, for instance, the EU-Singapore Free Trade Agreement, there are parts of the agreement that are pertaining to investment protection that might require the approval also of the member states' parliament. So the process would be much, much lengthier than the process for this version of the comprehensive agreement on investment, because it will only require to go through the European Parliament and not the national parliaments. So what is left out of this agreement? Okay, some of the areas are audiovisual services, air transport services and auxiliary services, except aircraft repair and maintenance services, the selling and marketing of air transport services, the computer reservation system services, and the ground handling services. So all these 4 exceptions, they will be, or they are included or under CAI, okay? Then activity supplies in the exercise of governmental authority, I think this is questionable. Then government procurement, very, very important, of goods or services purchased for government purpose. So if a government purchased something for the government purpose, then this is out of the agreement as well. And the agreement is applicable to FDI, to foreign direct investment, which means merger and acquisition and greenfield investment, and not portfolio investment, okay? However, we will have to look at what this definition of cover interest is, which is one of the very, very important aspects of this agreement, or the version that we are commenting on. So some of the notable aspects of the agreement, there could be more than that, but I just choose a number of them, which I think they are the most important ones. Eventually, other commentator would be choosing something else or something a little bit different, but I just want to focus on this ones. And first of all, is the unprecedented opening of the Chinese market to European investors. I think this is really the very, very important aspects. Had always been a very important issue raised by the business community, European business community, in terms of access to Chinese market. So this is very, very important. The introduction of a clear definition on cover entities and obligations on corporate social responsibility. So particularly this topic of cover entities is a way, for instance, give me an example of a cover entity, a state-owned enterprise, okay? So we will be dealing with that a little bit later. So who are the, let's say, agents, or who are the those mostly that will be affected by this agreement. So the covered entities, we will need to address that a little bit later. Then brings certainty and predictability to investors and business on both sides. It stimulates cross-EU-China FDI investment at the moment when the inflow of capital and technology are needed. Okay, so we are living in a moment when both sides actually needs inflow of capital and technology. Okay, not only China but also EU. I think this is quite important and sets an example. This, I think, is the political importance of this agreement in terms of international relations. Sets an example in regard to international cooperation on a win-win basis, and of course, open the door for further EU-China cooperation. So I'm going to address, as I mentioned, what is covered interest. And this is one of the sections, including one of the sections of the official draft. And I'm not going to be referring to 100% of what is written there because it would be too tedious. But I just want to call your attention for some of the things I have here written. Enterprise in which a party directly or indirectly owns more than 50% of the share capital, controls more than 50% of voting rights, holds power to appoint the majority of members of the board of directors, or power to control through any other means the decision of the enterprise, to legally direct actions in accordance with law and regulations, is a sole supplier of purchase of a good or service, excluding IP rights, or a group of enterprises with such powers designated by a party. What does it mean in very simple terms? It means that it do not only address the control of more than 50% of the share capital, okay? It means that a certain party can be considered a covered interest if there, through any other of the ways that I mentioned here, or even some other that is not mentioned here, but is in the text that was presented, has the way to control the decision-making power of a certain enterprise. Okay, and so it creates a complex element here in terms of defining who are the interested parties that are engaged in an investment process, in the FDI process, both in Europe and in China. So, what was the reaction on both sides of this agreement? First of all, of course, Chinese reaction point out mostly to the political points or interest or significance of this agreement, namely Global Times editorial of December 30, a New Year gift from both parties to the world. Together with the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, we said this new deal adds more weight to pluralistic global trade. And again, citing Global Times, that the EU-China BIT, this is in the original, so they're still calling it the Bilateral Investment Treaty, adds more weight to multilateralism despite challenges. So these are some of of course, there are many other comments, but I would say I just choose some that are somehow significant of the Chinese position in regard to this agreement. Then from the European side, of course, we have the official EU comments and position in regard to what was reached on December 30. And then there are also other, I would say maybe not so positive views on the agreement. So European reaction, The deal will guarantee unprecedented level of access for EU investors, allow EU companies to buy or establish new companies in key sectors, help level the playing field for their entry in China, and have Chinese authorities committing on rules in regard to subsidies for their state-owned enterprises. The most ambitious agreement that China has ever concluded with a third country. Merkel pushes the EU-China investment deal over the finish line despite criticism. And elsewhere, for instance, the diplomat, Kai is a win for China and a blow to transatlantic relations.
Yeah.
This because, as you know, some people of the Biden administration, although they could not do this officially, of course, they tried to influence the final decision in a way to delay at least that decision. Will the sudden EU-China deal damage relations with Biden? This was the New York Times. Cynicism explains a flaw on new EU-China commercial pact, economists. And this one, very interesting, the last one, China is buying insurance against future restrictions in Europe. We should not judge Kai by whether it enables Europe to export its systems and value. We should judge it by whether it allows Europe to remain true to its own. So there are many, many different directions. So I'm going to try to be very practical and address one particular question that is concerning us, Macau, and somehow the special economic regions. And the question is, does this agreement apply to the SAR, to the Special Administrative Regions of the People's Republic of China? Well, initially, and I wrote this in an article that I think I published a few days ago, just very short comment. My reaction was probably not, because the investment environment in Macau and Hong Kong are so different from the mainland China and the one country, two system principle and so on. And there are not major market access or fundamental issues in regard to market access and to EU investment in regard both to Macau and particularly to Hong Kong, because Hong Kong is really the most important recipient of the EU investment. However, after reading the text that we were provided by the European Commission, the official draft, I had some doubts. I'm going to say what I think about it. Actually, I'm not going to comment what will be the legal procedure, or if there will be any legal procedure for this agreement to be applied, to be applicable or not in Macau. Well, I'm not going to deal into the legal aspects, but in the substantive aspects of the agreement, what is written there are 2 points that I think that merit some reflection. The first one is the definition of the natural person. So people who are actually, let's say, included or affected by this agreement. So definition of natural person means for the PRC, a natural person who is a national of the PRC. So what I think is that if someone from Hong Kong, Macau, who is a national of the PRC, investing in Europe, that natural person will be covered by this agreement. This is my opinion in this regard. And the second one is a more general, let's say, aspect that is included in the text of the agreement, the Section 2, Article 2. The market access is applicable to its entire territory or on the basis of a regional subdivision. So it is applicable to the entire, in principle, to the entire territory. And there is a particular item, which is number 4, that deals with employment of natural persons. So the question is whether, for instance, a European company settles in Macau, and because this has to do with the conditions or not, or how, for instance, European manager or someone that that is coming from abroad to work in that company in Macau, what that person will be subject or not subject to under the terms of this agreement. So this is something I am leaving open for further discussion, and I'm sure that there will be people, particularly of the legal field, that will deal with that. And what will be the impact of this agreement on the Greater Bay Area? Well, the impact of the Greater Bay Area will be significant. And why? A very simple reason, because this is the region of China that is most open to foreign direct investment, and where there are already measures implemented in regard to market access introduced by the Foreign Investment Regulation of China 2020, and also some provincial measures by the Guangdong province, namely in terms of foreign ownership. Okay, so I'm sure that this agreement will have important impact in the Greater Bay Area, and even if not it doesn't impact directly Macau in a certain way, even in an indirect way, it will impact Macau. Because also many of the sectors which are of interest to you investors are located in the Greater Bay Area. Hong Kong is a traditional major source of foreign funds into the mainland market, and Macau could eventually benefit as a point of access to investment into the western region of the Greater Bay Area. Okay, so now let's look at the most fundamental issues. Let's say why this agreement is so important and so on. First of all, let's see EU-China foreign direct investment in comparative terms. And I'm going to just talk about very big numbers. And I need to call your attention or make a disclaimer for the fact that the figures are only for reference, because there are many different criteria in calculating foreign direct investment with different results. And I'm using just well-known sources. The EU investment in China is accounted as 180 billion euros, so the source is the EU. And the China investment in EU, 140 billion euros. Well, actually, the source is also EU. Sorry, I make a mistake in terms of. But okay, this is in the EU documents. Okay, but all the other, for instance, for the EU, all the figures I source, or most of them from the EU, and some of them from the Rogen Group. And for China, in regard to the sector figures, I source that from Rogen. Okay, so the main sectors where the EU invests in China is our automotive sector, 28%, basic materials and chemicals, 22%, financial services, 9%. And the latest, 2020, so second semester, more or less that. For this latest figures, we can see that 2019 ended on a high note with the value of completed EU FDI in China reaching 12 billion, okay, 12 billion. The highest annual figure since 2014. So European investment in China is going well and going up. However, Chinese investment in Europe is not so, it's not performing so well, mainly because of the reasons that I explained before. So the main sectors, these for 2019, were consumer products and services, 5.2%, ICT, so technology and so on, and communication and technology, 2.4%, automotive, 1.3%, financial and business services, 0.7%. So in terms of the EU, the three main recipients of Chinese FDI in 2020, second semester, were France, 362 million euros, Portugal, 263 million euros, and Romania, 119 million euros in the third quarter of 2020. So these figures are just, just for reference, okay? I would say, just for you to have an idea. And I think what we can say from these figures is that in terms of accumulated investment in EU and China, they have I wouldn't say they are balanced, but China has come very close to EU investment. China investment in EU has come very close to EU investment in China in the last few years. And I think this is something that we have to keep in mind, okay? So what will be the main hurdles for KAI's final approval by the EU? The final draft was approved by all EU member states at the council level. However, the final text will still have to be formally approved by the council and will be sent to EU Parliament for ratification. In principle, the agreement as it is will not have to be approved by national parliaments. And the political position will come mainly from the Parliament on the basis that it do not comply with EU law, particularly in regard to EU norms and principles. This is part of the reaction that we've been seeing in a way from several sectors of the EU political spectrum, and also EU public opinion, as well as the academic community and so on. But I think my take on this, and I can say that I would probably bet, I shouldn't be doing it, but I would say that at the end the agreement will be approved. So we have to understand as well the EU investment policy. How is the EU investment policy working in regard, because since we are on this side of the world, what are the objectives of the EU investment policy? The objective is to secure a level playing field so that the EU investors abroad are not discriminated or mistreated. It's creating predictable and transparent business environment, promoting investment that supports sustainable development, respect for human rights and high labor and environmental standards, and attract international investment into the EU while protecting the EU essential interests, okay? So the investment agreement must abandon the principle, not be in conflict with EU law, is consistent with EU principles and objectives for external action. And I think this is just a note that I think is important to say, that one of the, from the economic viewpoint and from the policy viewpoint, there is a strong move in the EU to have its European industrial policy put up in a way that has not been there until now. Because the Europe economic strength in the coming decades will be hugely dependent on the ability, on its ability to remain a global manufacturing and industrial power. So this drive comes particularly from France and Germany, and it will have a very important role, will play an important role in the EU from now on. I'm sure about that. So if Europe still wants to be a manufacturing powerhouse in 2020, we need a genuine European industrial policy, and the industrial policy will be massively investing in innovation. Europe wants to be a world leader on artificial intelligence, adapt the regulatory framework in terms of competition rules, state control, and subsidies merger control, and eventually appeal to the European Council on Commission decisions if, for instance, that decision affects the setting up of European champions in certain areas. So we can expect something from the European Union in the near future that will somehow also change or in a certain direction their policies in terms of competition and so on. So the question is, why is the investment agreement so politicized? Well, the answer for that is that the Article 21 of the Treaty of Lisbon for external relations set up the whole picture of EU external relations, including, of course, trade and commercial relations. And that article is very clearly, it states very clearly that it's to promote all over the world democracy, the rule of law, the universality and indivisibility of human rights and fundamental liberties, the respect for human dignity, principle of equality and solidarity, and respect for the United Nations Charter and international law. So this is the setting that makes, after all, the discussion on something like the investment agreement so politicized. Now, how does the CAI Investment Committee, that will be at the level of vice premier, works in terms of the EU-China dialogue architecture, which includes dozens of dialogues, as we can see from this slide? Well, it would be put at the high-level economic and trade dialogue. So this will be this is where the CAI Investment Committee will be sitting, let's say so, and so at a very, very high level, at the economic and sectoral dialogue, the pillar of economic and sectoral dialogue of China-EU relations. Well, we are going to advance a little bit more. Time passed very quickly. What we have here is, well, the developments of China and EU relations and the comprehensive agreement of investment. We have to remember there is something that is the framework for China-EU cooperation or China-EU relations. Still a 1985 trade and economic agreement is something already with many, many decades. We have here a few, let's say, most significant timeline or moments of EU-China relations in the last few decades. And of course, we need to acknowledge here that in 2003, EU and China became comprehensive strategic partners. And the first China-EU policy was released in that year. Then in 2007, with the idea of replacing somehow the trade economic agreement, their negotiations started for a comprehensive partnership agreement, but those negotiations didn't went very well, and somehow the negotiations for CAI started in 2013, and let's say that one very relevant moment of China-EU relations was in 2014, when for the very first time a Chinese president visited the headquarters of the European Union it was in 2014, and in 2016 there is a new EU strategy set up for China. In 2018, a China-EU policy paper, the third one. 2019, a EU-China strategic outlook, which is also a very relevant document, where the EU defines its position in relation to China in different aspects, as a competitor, in some areas, incorporating in another, as a let's say as a systemic what do you call this? Well, I would say that this EU-China strategic outlook bring out some issues that we can talk about this later, but what is important is that notwithstanding everything, there is ample room for dialogue, and the 2020 agreement on geographic indications was a good sign of something that EU and China reached in terms of an agreement, and of course this CAI at the end of 2020. And actually, what changed in terms of the EU-China relations particularly after the financial crisis? Well, the Chinese investment in Europe started growing up quite a lot. There was increased activity in China relationship with the group of EU and non-EU European countries, called the 16+1, that then was enlarged to 17+1 group, meant that there was another platform for cooperation outside of the EU between China and European countries, and EU didn't like very much this development. Of course, the Belt and Road Initiative is a very important element of a China-EU potential cooperation, but also potential, let's say, misunderstandings or potential issues in regard to its relation. Then we have the negotiations of the Comprehensive Partnership Agreement that went very well and is still there. Then this Comprehensive Agreement on Investment, that finally we have the first stage of it agreed, the political agreement. Let's hope it is going to be let's say, materialized within 1 year or 1 year and a little bit more. Then there are still some human rights issues, the COVID-19 issues, and of course, the EU's investment screening mechanism that was introduced in 2019. That is something that is general, of course, but it is not very difficult to ascertain that actually it was some investments, some Chinese investments that trigger actually somehow the EU in the EU, let's say, urgency in terms of finding an investment screening agreement mechanism. These are some figures of EU-China investment and trade. These are from Eurostat, so these are very well easily assessed figures. The investment figures here, we need to look at this with some let's say cautiousness, because these are the way they approach the investment here. The figures is through the balance of payment system, and so, for instance, investment that goes into the EU from a third country is, but from China through a third country is not counted here. So we just look at it as a reference, first of all. And then, of course, if you ask where does the Chinese FDI in Europe is concentrated, we see that they are mostly concentrated in the two major economies of the EU, Germany and France, but of course with some recent developments, Portugal, Spain, and so on. But of course, Germany and France are very the most important destinations of those investments now that the UK is no longer a member of the EU. We can see here, although these figures are a little bit refer to a few years back, however, if you look at these figures, you will see the relatively smallness of the China investment in the EU, because even including Hong Kong, you will see that they are way behind investment by the United States, from Switzerland, Canada, even Brazil, and so on. So the weight of Chinese investment in Europe, notwithstanding all the publicity and all the reactions that it raised in the last few years, is quite small compared to the major investors in the EU. And of course, one of the reasons that I mentioned that was important for the EU to complete this investment agreement with China is because of the impact of the US-China Phase 1 agreement on EU exports. And these are estimates, but it comes from a paper that was published by the DG for External Policy of the Union. So it's a research paper that was made for them. And the imports from the EU would decline. This is in regard to China, right? Imports from the EU would decline 10.8 billion US dollars, equal to 5% of undistorted benchmark. So it would decline 5%. EU aircraft exports would fall by US dollar 2.7 billion, or 28% of the benchmark scenario. Vehicles and industrial machinery, US 2.4 billion, 7%, and US dollar 1.4 billion. So you can see that the impact of this phase one deal, US-China deal on EU exports is quite significant, okay? And particularly that Germany would be likely to lose 4.4 billion US dollars worth of exports. So we can understand why the EU arguing and using his decision-making power decided to go ahead with China in finalizing this agreement, even if on the other side of the Atlantic, some people would say, oh, come on, just wait, let's talk about it. But no, I mean, EU has some urgency in terms of finalizing this agreement. And of course, not only for economic reasons, but also because of putting, let's say, putting up its own strategic autonomy. I am going to be very, very brief before finalizing. So there are some of the concerns of the EU about China overseas foreign direct investment, which everybody knows. So I'm going to be very, I'm not going to spend more time on that. You can see what, and then what the EU had put together some regulatory framework. Some of this, particularly the foreign subsidies screening, this will come out somehow, you know, it's going to probably happen, will be the next step. But we already have the merger control measures that will tackle things that eventually will not be covered by KAI. We have the FDI screening, which is the most publicized mechanism where security and public order is invoked. And then there will be some screening on foreign subsidies, distortion of internal market, etc., etc. So I want to thank Professor Alexander Sacchini from the University of Macau, who presented this chart, this document here in a very recent presentation. But the most important thing that we can see from here is that besides the comprehensive agreement on investment, there will be other mechanisms. And of course, there will be areas that eventually people in the future will need to talk about that could actually, let's say, overlap. Although they are different things, they are different mechanisms, okay? But I think there are room for further research on that. Mm-hmm. So, in concluding, KAI is the result of long years of negotiations and adoption by the EU of a principal pragmatism. This is a EU jargon, principal pragmatism, to safeguard its interests and moving forward with strategic autonomy in regard to the transatlantic relation, that peaceful coexistence is possible and cooperation among different regimes is attainable. EU do not want to be a part of a new Cold War and must not act as a secondary actor in world politics. China is adjusting its economic development and opening up as part of the dual circulation strategy, and China and Europe dialogue and cooperation must be reinforced and deepened for the benefit of a safe, secure, and peaceful Eurasia and the whole world. So here I am. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Marcus. Our questions are welcomed, but I would like to share a bit of my personal take. Because as you say, there will still surely some hurdles in the years to come before the actual adoption or ratification of the deal. But do you think that, because as your PowerPoint points out, there are lots of things actually left out, at least for the time being, right, by the agreement, such as goods and services purchased for governmental purpose. And I think it can be open to a very broad interpretation, actually, right? And do you think the actual application of this agreement to state-owned enterprise or for this kind of procurement for governmental purpose will be one of the points for future continuous debate or argument? And also about this agreement has to be in line with EU norms, right? And do you think what kind of explicit hurdles which will be most likely in your opinion?
Well, thank you very much for the question. From what we've seen up to now and what we know in terms of EU public opinion, yeah, and also perception of China and so on. Well, I'm sure that this is going to be quite a, let's say, a process, quite I would say, a tough process. Okay, there will be discussions, there will be different opinions, but at the end of the day, I think that at the end of the day that looking at at what is at stake, which is basically building up a much better business relationship, because let's put it this way, EU and China are strategic partners. The China, EU are interconnected, interdependent in many ways, economic ways and so on. And there is also this territorial and geopolitical aspect, which is the very, very great landmass that is Eurasia, right? Yeah. And actually working towards the a cooperation and improving the conditions and creating more predictability in the market access, in several other aspects. This is a very positive move. Okay, so at the end of the day, I think that there will always be people and parties and public opinion and academia eventually will write a lot of papers on this, recommending EU to take a very strong position in regard to some of the developments in China, or even questioning this agreement. But I think at the end of the day, it will come out in a positive way, and it will make the EU cooperation with China stronger. And I think that this is a very good opportunity for EU and China also to deepen this relationship. And so I think that we are living in a very complex world, and we are living in times, very complex times, right? What is going on in Europe is really complicated in terms of the developments of COVID-19. The economy is suffering a lot. Of course, China also went through difficult times, but Chinese economy is doing better, much better. And so I think that the China-EU cooperation in the long run is a very, very positive pillar for world peace and development. Yeah,
and thank you. And other members of audience also, you say it will be you sounds rather overall speaking, you sound still optimistic, right? But it is difficult.
And
no.
And yeah, I'm optimistic about this, and I've been following EU-China relations for 19 years now. This is maybe my 20 year of this. So I think that this is a very important step. Actually, maybe in the last 20 years, there are not too much in China-EU relations that can be compared to in positive terms to what happens now with this political agreement first, and then this final formal agreement in regard to this investment agreement. But I also think that when you mentioned the procurement issues, well, I think the procurement issues. Let's see how the final text will come out, because the way it is formulated, there are some areas of common procurement that are out of this agreement, but there are other areas that are not. Okay, so it needs to be, let's say, this is just a very first approach of something that came out a few days ago. So this is a very risky, I would say, exercise, but in a good sense, because I think that there is room for other interpretations, of course, but I think that overall, this agreement is a very important step in the deepening of China-EU relations.
And perhaps the last questions, one of our friends on Zoom asked, she say French media seems to be more critical of the agreement, because it's saying that it's favor more German interests, because as you said, Germany is a main pusher of this agreement, right? So what do you think of this kind of French opinions?
Well, of course, Germany is maybe the main beneficiary in the EU of this agreement. But on the other hand, France and Germany, you saw that they are the main recipients of Chinese FDI. Okay, number one, and number two, the fact I didn't mention this. I said I would do it, but I actually didn't mention. But let me take this opportunity to talk about it, which is why Emmanuel Macron is there. Emmanuel Macron is in the picture exactly to signal, to signal that France interest in this agreement. Of course, critics of Emmanuel Macron will say differently. There are critics that will point to as I say, there are the human rights issues. There are so many issues in the China-EU relations, and you can actually raise many other questions in terms of this agreement. But the fact is, the political importance of Emmanuel Macron there is that he wants to show that France is deeply involved in making this agreement true, and probably he would like to put his signature there, right? Because there will be elections in France next year as well, in 2022. So altogether, this will always be a controversial agreement, as China-EU relations will always have some elements of controversy, some issues, right? Some issues, because are two different systems. But this is how the world is, right? Not something that we imagine as ideal, but this is the real world. And there is very strong room for cooperation with win-win outcomes. And I think this is what, at the end of the day, the Europeans will be deciding and will be moving forward, which is to go and to support this agreement, and at least a majority of the European Parliament, for instance, will do it. This is my belief.
Okay, thank you. And it seems that yeah, and because there will still be perhaps 1 or 2 years before the actual adoption of this agreement. So we look forward to another opportunity to discuss its further development. And once again, thank you very much, Mr. Marcus, and it has been great pleasure. And your talk is most informative and interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.